don't sit still is what I'm getting at. Like, I never sat there and went, hey, just do what your job is and what the prep list says. I've always looked beyond and just had my blinkers off, and I just pushed myself to, learn to upskill myself and to learn other things. And if I didn't know something, then I just asked.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. When we think of the catering industry, we often think of big events, weddings, birthdays, and the like, but some have carved out a niche catering for specific diets on a large scale. How do you take the restaurant chef know-how into a catering offering that considers health and diet? Petros Dellidis is the chef and owner of Adonis Catering in Melbourne. Petros, how are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to get you on the show. You're a busy man with an interesting catering company. How are things going?
Good. Business is good. Busy pays the bills. So it is a bit hectic at the moment. I have so my biggest client is Melbourne City Football Club. I'm sitting in the community room right now, and technically speaking, I'm in a construction zone for another couple of more weeks. We've been waiting in the last 2 years for a build to happen out here in Casey Fields. And that's almost done, which is great because I get to walk into a brand new kitchen in a couple of weeks. And then we sort of flip to becoming looking after the men's and women's teams here at Melbourne City has been for about 6 years. And we now then switch into what the rest of the club needs from a catering standpoint. So, to do things with the executive and the city and business programs to, looking after the academy kids. There's under 13s to under 21s teams playing here a couple of nights a week and match days for the NPL season. And then you got the football schools kids, city football school kids running around. They're from age 5 to 12 as well. A couple of nights a week also. So, we're a fully fledged football club out here in Casey. So it's, servicing all the needs. And we've moved over from Bundoora a couple of years ago. Where they were, Melbourne City was based out in Latrobe for a bit, for a good chunk, almost a decade, I think. But since City of Casey has been really good, and they welcomed us over, and the club has invited me over and my family, and we've become a part of the furniture, which is nice.
Give us a sense of the scale. Like, how many sort of meals and how often are we talking?
So the men's team is about 45. Melbourne City men's team is about 45 people because it's not just the squad. It's you got physios, you got coaching staff, you got analysts. Like, these people, there's just bodies running around left, right, and centre. So there's about 45 meals there that we do about 4 or 5 times a week. Throw in the women's team now. Women's A-League women's now is in full swing. So there's about 30 odd there with their own team of physios and analysts and coaching staff. So all they need to get fed. Some of these guys will be here for 10 to 12 hours a day, just ingrained and obsessed with what they're doing, which is fantastic, which we love that too. And then throw in, we service some football clubs as well. So Melbourne Demons, who are just across the road, they're in off season right now, but they're going to get back into it real soon. That's another 60 mouths there to look after. So yeah, the numbers scale up. We looked after Carlton Footy Club for a couple of years. We don't anymore, but in that time as well, we're carting food from Cranbourne to Carlton 4 or 5 times a week to look after their men's and women's teams. And that's another, 600, 700 meals a week there as well. So, yeah, we've had a bit on our plate, to be honest, which has been good.
Looking after sort of different clubs like that, is there any sort of rivalry that you sort of are confronted with?
Look, I'm a Richmond supporter, so cooking for Carlton Football Club for a couple of years, there's always that discussion. It was funny. I was most recently when I cooked at Melbourne Demons when they were in the finals. Christian Petrarca asked me, "Who do you like?" He was the first person to come up for lunch. So, who do you barrack for? I said, Richmond. I said, yeah, but didn't you do stuff for Carlton? And we're playing Carlton this week. And I said, yeah, but Melbourne Demons pays my bills. So I go for the team that pays my bills. So, as much as there's been plenty of discussions over the years of, you got certain team coming up, certain supporter X comes up and says, hey, can you maneuver something? I'm like, no. They pay the bills. You have to look after them. So that's how it works. But yeah, it is a tricky one with rivalries. And now that sports I don't understand, so we're slowly getting into basketball now and sort of engaging Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, and a lot of that discussion is happening around there too. And I'm like, I have no idea about basketball. I don't even follow basketball. AFL, different story, and A-League, different story. But it's it's always a funny one.
What's it like, sort of from a cooking perspective? Do you have to consider all sorts of diets? Is it very much a different approach to what you did in the restaurant world?
Yeah, I had to be honest, I had to reteach myself how to cook. I haven't bought sugar and butter in 6 years. I wish I had the foresight 6 years ago to invest in sweet potato and brown rice. Because it's a whole different kettle of fish. It's more, I've worked really closely with dietitians, and I have been for many years, and probably forever will be now. So working with dietitians allows them, it's hard because the dietitian world is really funny because they don't have, dietitian world can't cook to the scale that we cook, but the dietitians have the knowledge that we need as chefs to be able to produce what they need. So there's a bit of you have to find a common ground. And as soon as the dietitians realize that they talk to me or my team, they realize that we know what we're talking about and we're okay with the adjustment of, butter to olive oil or brown rice to white rice or red rice or black rice to quinoa to chia seeds to oats and how to understand those ingredients and how to cook with them at scale, they become your best mate. So once you get in with all the dietitians, which, is relatively easy for us because we've been doing it for as long as we have now. It's an easy caper to get involved in, and we sort of speak their language. We're not trained dietitians from our end. Like, I haven't done a degree in nutrition or anything for that matter, but at least I can talk sweet potato and rice with them and the amounts of chicken that they need and proteins and macros and all that stuff, and we can come to a common ground and have a pretty good understanding of how it all works.
Is there a couple of examples of some of the dishes that maybe are on high rotation that you do that sort of exemplifies feeding that world?
Yeah, absolutely. So athletes are very superstitious, and that's across the board from basketballers, footballers to soccer players. So my Melbourne City boys, for example, they will not play a game. The day before a game, they won't play without spaghetti bolognese and garlic bread. It will not get on the pitch. So we sort of work, the week works whether you find out when match day is and then you work backwards from match day one. So match day one is always spaghetti bolognese, but match day 5 or 3 to 5 can be anything like, right now we're prepping, we're doing a Mexican brisket day. So we rubbed brisket in a chipotle salsa and cumin and coriander powder, put it in the oven overnight, pulled it out this morning, strained off the liquid and reduced that into a bit of a jus, bit of a stock to tip back over the brisket and re-warm it that way. And we'll pull that beef and then do like we'll always have some brown rice in this case for a carb component. And then we're starting to work with the veg components and how they make that exciting. Because let's be honest, red meat and carbs aren't going to be the most exciting thing. So then we start working with the color because obviously athletes they're so used to eating for sustenance that they're scared. They become a little bit carb phobic at certain parts of the year. They're constantly getting skin fold tested. So if these guys aren't operating around 2 to 5 body fat percentage, then I get in the starting 11 or the starting 22. And that's when the dramas start. If you get injured, that also always comes back to what nutrition they're having and how that's managed. There's a bigger scheme of it all when it comes to recovery. That's obviously why these physios are on big bucks as well, because they're keeping all these players out in the park. When you got Matt Leckie right now, who's, the Australian darling for scoring in the World Cup this time last year, he's now on the track. He's now on the rehab track because he did injured his knee during the last Socceroos training camp. So to get him back on the track now is a whole process. And as much as no one sees that every day, it always comes down to physio and nutrition and how to manage that and the sleep patterns and all the data that gets compiled and every these analysis people just sitting there logging all this stuff. And they're just they're like the accountants of the football team world, of the sporting world. And they just sit there and crunch numbers and handball them up to the head of sports science people and head of human performance and the sports science people and the head coach, and they just want to know, why isn't my player on the park, and why isn't my left side running faster as my right side? And it all comes back down to nutrition. And probably post the SADA post the SADA scandal of 10 years ago, supplements and nutrition has changed massively, and that's where we've sort of stepped in and went, right, we can do everything naturally. As long as you give us the macros you want us to play with, we can make a Mexican beef brisket with a Mexican flavor profile with brown rice and the iceberg lettuce salad and the mango, avocado, red onion, cherry tomato salsa that can go over the top of it. And that's sort of the game we play.
I want to explore this world in detail a little bit later on, but take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up and what sort of role did food play for you?
I'm a proper Greek boy from the northern suburbs of Melbourne. So I grew up in Thomastown, born in Preston. My parents came over in the late 60s, mid 60s, and have lived in the same house for over 50 years. They left their country. They left Greece on a boat for 32 days, came here, and couldn't speak English. My parents still can't speak English properly. That's not a knock on them. That's just the reality. And it's like they picked up the village in Greece where they're from, and brought it to Thomastown, if that makes sense. So it's a bit of a laugh, like growing up in a very ethnic street and being in a very ethnic household. The big occasions, the big Greek calendar occasions are always massive in my family. Greek Easter Orthodox Easter is my favorite part of the year. Christmas, I don't know why I don't like Christmas. I'm not sure if it was when I was a kid or if it's more of a hospo thing now of cooking for close to two decades and you're just trying to get through the December push. But Christmas I've now come around to since I've become a dad in the last 3 years, just because my wife keeps harassing me about it. To like Christmas and to get into the spirit of Christmas, not being such a bloody Grinch, apparently. Her words, not mine. But the Easter for me is the best part of the year. Loads of name days are really cool as well, because obviously name days isn't something that the rest of Australia does. But in the Greek community, it's, St. John and St. George and St. Nick are pretty big days. My daughter, Eve, her name day is a massive occasion as well. So it's Petros and Paul is June 29th, but that's not a massive one, but it's still like a semi big one. Then it's not a public holiday level name day. So it's cool that that scenario has always happened in my life. Look, I watched my mother cook for many years, thinking back now, and watch my mama cook for many years and go, right, she wasn't a trained or professional cook by any means. She was a housewife. She raised 4 kids virtually by herself because my dad was constantly working. But it was a case of just being the extrinsic feeling from me to see her slave all day, making the most beautiful tiropita, handmade pastry, from the crack of dawn till late in the afternoon or at night, to be slaving away in the stove, making all sorts of beautiful things, pastries, sweets, savory things, and, oven bakes. And then just, family comes and sits down in the middle of the table. We all sit down together. So that's probably been my biggest motivation. Not that I've tried to cook what my mum does. I'll do it hopelessly. But it's very much a case of like, seeing how she goes about it and what the end result. And I suppose that's very similar to the restaurant realm. My mum's spaghetti bolognese is the best. I'd eat spaghetti bolognese off the ground if you gave me the opportunity, although it's great off a plate too, but I'd literally eat it in any opportunity I get. So it's ironic that, my biggest client loves, won't get on the pitch unless they've had spaghetti bolognese the day before a game. So, her tiropita, like I hated, like a lot of Greek kids, I tried to boycott Saturday Greek school as much as possible. And the only way my mum got me out of bed was like she'd have the sound. So I think there's a thing called a briki, which is a thing you make Greek coffee out of, Turkish coffee out of. And the sound of a teaspoon with clarified butter in this briki hitting the base of it would wake me up on Saturday mornings at like 6:30. And I'd jump out of bed like, oh, Mum, you're making pita. Awesome. And she'd be like, yeah, you can have this pita when you come back from Greek school this afternoon. I'm like, oh, fuck, you got me. So it's that clever ingenuity that I've grown up with of maneuvering how she knew that she was going to have to wrestle me out of bed to, want to go to Saturday school or church on Sunday for that matter. So, yeah.
Where did you get your foot in the door in hospitality?
My brothers. So whilst I was in high school, my dad had a couple of shops in Diamond Creek, little old Diamond Creek, which is near Greensboro, if anyone doesn't know where that is. My dad had a couple of shops. He had a tenant who was having some dramas, couldn't pay the bills, walked out one day and left all the pizza equipment in there. My brothers were at a crossroads in their careers. I come from an engineer's family. Like my dad, his brothers, all 4 or 5 of his brothers, they've all been engineers. All my cousins, they're all mechanics, engineers. I'm the only cook of the family. Although everyone cooks recreationally in the families, or the 50 plus Dellidises on my dad's side. I'm probably the only one who's gone out and done it professionally as a career. So when my brothers started a pizza place in the early 2000s, they did it because they were sort of at a ceiling where what they were doing in their lives. One of my brothers is an aircraft mechanic who worked for Boeing for 20 plus years, and another one was a fitter and turner sheet metal for 20, 30 years. Ironically, now they've gone back to that. But they did a pizza shop for 5 years in Little Old Diamond Creek, and that's where I got my start, to be honest. They wanted me, my oldest brother, who's been sort of my father figure in my life, he got me into this pizza place with the idea that I'd sweat and hate it and work heaps and not have a social life and be on my feet all the time. And he thought, I'll do this for my little brother and you'll hate it and you want to be behind the desk job and be like, unlike the rest of us. And then it blew up in his face. And because I got a buzz, I got hooked by this, camaraderie, this determination to succeed sort of scenario. It's adrenaline pumping services that I loved and I still love. So then from there, that opened some doors to RACV Club where I did work experience. And the second I did work experience, I finished, I got to the end of work experience and I was like, this is what I'm doing. That's it. Rest of my life. I'm doing it because I loved it straight away. So it was just like a case of, the RACV Club at the time was at Queen Street. They were getting ready to move to the current Burke Street place. And they were like, hey, you finished high school, end of the year. Come with us. We'll have a spot for you to start an apprenticeship next year. And then I said that to my parents and I almost got my head decapitated from the rest of my body. Like a good bug boy. So I had to finish school. Not that I hated school. Not that I was not that I was bad at school. It was just like, I know I want to do this, but I'm glad in hindsight that I ended up finishing high school and finishing a VCE and doing all that. But as second I finished VCE, I think I finished exams in November 2004. Within a week, I was in RSCV Club working, getting ready for Christmas trade, getting straight into it. So like there was no ifs, ands and buts about it. Like it was happening and I was doing it. And so, I started my apprenticeship in February 2005 and haven't looked back since.
Who's been really important? What sort of venues have been important as well as you've built your career?
Look, RACV Club was a huge foundation, was a fantastic foundation, to be honest. They opened up, they gave me a really good understanding early on in my career that it's not just being able to know how to cook. You have to have a network of suppliers, network of farmers, network of people in the industry who can get you places, help get you places. That doesn't mean that I didn't have to work hard. Absolutely, I did. I had to probably work harder than ever. But that was more to the case of if I look back at it now, RSCV Club opened the door for me and landed as an apprentice at the Press Club in October 2006. And those years, my 7 years at Made Establishment or Press Club, working through the company, was amazing for my career. I look at that time frame from 2006, 2009, for me was a degree of higher learning. It was, 80 plus hour weeks. These things aren't glamorous now. And it's great that the industry has changed the way it has. But I'm glad that I got to do massive hours and I had a bit of a work ethic behind me and the environment and the culture around me in those years at Press Club to be able to say, right, this is how I'm going to work. And this is my understanding of how things happen. That higher learning, I don't think I would have got many other places. I'm not saying I couldn't have got it, if I went to Vietnam, for example. But it stuck to me that I was working with, at the time, a young Greek Cypriot guy who wanted to chase it. And, I looked up to that at the time and loved it and enjoyed being mentored by it. And just the whole opening of being a part of a restaurant, opening with that much buzz, being a part of a restaurant with that much buzz all the time. There was always a busy dining room. I never remember the place being quiet. We were always getting nailed. It was always, an easy restaurant to run, an easy business to run as a busy restaurant. So it was, balls to the wall at the start. It was very rock star like. I vividly remember when John Lethlean came in for the first time and the stress and panic and living my life. And now I call it living my life in a state of anxiety. But that's what it felt like at the time. When you're waking up in the 2, 3 in the morning and you're waking up to the sound of the fucking docket machine and then waking up 6, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. to just what, I'm not going to lie in bed or hit the snooze button again. I'm in the shit for service today. I'm going to go in early. And just that being in early, being first in, being last one out sort of became like a badge of honor. Stupid now, I look at it and I'm just like, why can't we be more effective and efficient? But at the time it made sense and it was a bit of the bravado camaraderie, the bravado, that testosterone driven kitchens that were probably strong and prevalent at that time, which as I said, I'm glad that the industry is pushing that out and that all that, pent up testosterone machismo is coming out of the industry because it's not sustainable and it's not me as a family man now. I got, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old at home. So it's just a case of I want to be there for them. I want to be there for my kids. I want to like Christmas and not hate it because we just got smashed in December and, we can't feel our feet like we normally do. There's a bit of PTSD triggered whenever you watch The Bear, and not because that episode 7. I think it was the first season when the Docker machine is just going nuts. It was like a 16-minute episode, as long as 16 minutes of my life. And then my wife's just watching me. And my wife's like excited by it because she's into cinema and film and all that, and she's loving it. And I'm just like, no, this is fucking traumatic. Like this is bringing back some shit. So it's and then getting locked into a call room is probably another ripper one as well. But not that I've done that, but I can only imagine how that would be. But yeah, it was an amazing understanding of like going from RSCV club to press club to my relationship with Shane at the time as well. Working at Maha. And because when I left Made Establishment, I ended up at Maha. I was there for a couple of years, and I didn't work in the restaurant per se at Maha. Like at that time, I was Shane's external guy, and I looked after. At the time, he stepped away from. He divorced from Made Establishment, and he referred to me as the puppy dog that he got in the divorce at the time. And he got me in the divorce and was like, "Right, Petros, you're going to do this development gig that you've been wanting to do, this research and development job, and you're going to look after all this external stuff for me." He had all these contracts lined up of Mercedes and Western Bulldogs and Roland by Peter Roland by Shane Delia at the time, and obviously doing the Spice Journey series, 3 series of that plus a cookbook. So in that next 2 years was another level of high learning of outside the kitchen that is also involved in the industry that I really wanted to know about, that I was really trying to get my hands on working for George or working at Made. Didn't happen, didn't pan out. So Shane gave me that opportunity to a little bit of a smaller scale, but nonetheless a large scale of now understanding of how the food styling part of the world works. To this day, I still have a fantastic relationship with Caroline Velick and a host of others who I've met over the years who, we can always call upon and lean on. And, when the shit hits the fan, like COVID, for example, that's the network that you need to build as a young chef anyway to say, right, like this is what you're going to do with your life. It's not just knowing how to cook. It's not just, being surrounded by this stainless steel bench tops and this monotony of the sound of the bar mix and the oven door opening and closing and all these fucking buzzers going off and timers. It's more of the case of like, right, there's a world outside of this kitchen, and there's understanding of how to run a business. There's understanding of how a cookbook happens or how a TV show happens, and it's not sunshine and rainbows. It's hard work in there as well. But it's because I had that base and understanding of what that hard work looked like, it plugged into everything else that I wanted to do. So post Maha, when I left there, it was a case of like, right, I want to do Adonis. Like, I felt there was a gap in the catering world for athlete-specific catering. To this day, there's only a handful of us doing it. Like, I can rattle off the names now, but like we're all like little purveyors, little operators, which is great. But it's a case of like, normally these football clubs would go to local Joe Blow cafe down the street that they like their coffee and say, hey, can you cook for my players 45 people at a time, a couple of times a week? And these cafes will be dumb to say no. But they don't have that knowledge and experience that we have now of working with dietitians and going to that realm. So again, like it all comes back to how hard do you want to work? And that's sort of something that started not just at RSCV Club or a press club, but it was more like the work ethic that was instilled to me from my parents and my dad and my siblings for that matter, because we all have been working hard. We just sometimes it seems as if in our lives we've been running around in circles and sort of ended up in the wrong destination, whereas I've sort of run around and taken a step back and said, right, this is where I want to go, and I want to do a catering company. And I don't know how it looks on the end, but I know this is the direction I want to go. So it's just sort of being comfortable with that and how to chase it.
You spent a bit of time in Bordeaux, France as well. Do you have any stories of the impact that had on you?
Another understanding of what the Michelin world goes through. I won the Thierry Marx Award when I was an apprentice. If you look at the lineup of people who have, chefs who have won that award and are still in the industry and doing pretty well for themselves today, it's a pretty humbling list to be a part of. So to be, you get shipped off to Bordeaux, not even the city, like you're 90 minutes away from the city. We ended up in Pauillac, which, at the time I had no idea about wine. And I talk to Soms now, and they're just like, you're walking through some of the best chateaus and wineries in the world. And I was just like walking back and forth from work at the end of the night or in the day, and I'm just throwing rocks at, these signs because I'm walking across a dirt road for 15, 20 minutes to get to work. And it's just like, yeah, I'll just throw some rocks here. And then, it's to be involved, to be immersed in that system of 30 plus cooks in a brigade that cook for 40, 50 people at a time, 15 plus courses per person. You're part of the elite, and those memories and those, that time is something I still hold very close to me. I actually was looking at that cookbook recently, the Thierry Marx cookbook, and, the guy's out there. He still is out there, but even the way he did his cookbook is out there. Like, his his molecular gastronomy stuff, which at the time I was into massively. I'm not into much anymore, but it's just more of a case of that respect and knowledge of going, right, this looks awesome. You've reconstituted a pear that isn't a pear because it's filled with chocolate inside, and then you cut into it and it's, it looks like a pear, but why is there chocolate coming out of it? Liquid chocolate coming out of it. And it's just like the bombastic way of how he approached it, and which is pretty unreal. And the discipline that comes with it. Like I remember sitting in the pastry. I did pastry for like 3 weeks working there. And I vividly remember a picture of Chef Marx and his judo team sitting like in his full judo kit and in all the black belts that he's got, sitting up in the pastry to remind you of the discipline that you need each day. And, whilst you're going through your 60th mini tart shell that you got to do in 15 minutes, and your fingernails are cooked and your paring knife has cut you again, and because even though forever it's not sharp enough to bevel the edge of the tart shell, you just got to keep going and keep pushing. And that's the things that you keep remembering. Like, yeah. So it was an amazing experience. It was amazing just to work with internationals. It was like I suppose now it was like working in a football team, and you're working with other elite people who want to get to a really high level. But you had all levels there in that 30 people brigade. You had the 14, 15, 16-year-olds who were getting bankrolled by their parents to go on stage for 2 months and live away from home, and who have never lived away from home, who are living with total randoms in a share accommodation facility around the corner from work. So and then you've got the CDPs who are gunning for the sous chef's job, and the sous chef who's trying to get a head chef job, and the head chef who wants the MOF, the Master of Food, French colours on his collar, on his Bragard chef jacket, Egyptian cotton, 100%. Like it's that level and understanding. Like, it was so cool to just be a part of it. I remember the first service I sat there. When we arrived in Pauillac, we went over to Chateau Cordillon Bage to do to start and they said, before you come to work tomorrow, we're going to cook a dinner for you tonight. I'm like, awesome. So I'm literally standing there, flying the wall, pressed my back up against the wall, trying to be one with the wall so I don't get in anyone's way, because it was like one of the quietest kitchens I've been in. I'm trying not to make a peep. And, just watching a beef fillet come back because it was overcooked was by far one of the biggest, an experience that I've still, to see a grown man get slapped backhanded because, a beef fillet is overcooked for the third time. The first time there was a death stare, the second time there was a discussion, and the third time there was a slap. So I don't know how that scale goes. And obviously my French wasn't great at the time to understand exactly what was happening or what the issue was, but it was just like one of the most surreal, like it was a surreal thing to see and remember.
You've cooked so many events and did so many things with Shane Delia, but one of them was in Washington, D.C. at the G20 summit. Do you have any stories of what that was like?
Man, that was unreal. So that was like at the IMF. So International Monetary Fund is it was the company that controls all the world banks. So we're cooking for 50 of the world's bankers, the guys who influenced, the GFC or what's going on with petrol prices now and all that stuff, right? So that was pretty unreal. And they asked Shane or engaged Shane to cook an Australian menu and to take it over to Washington. There was a lot of R&D around, very quick R&D, mind you, because this happened within like 2-week time frame of like how to take honey over to another country with a custom system that doesn't let you fart on the plane, let alone, take a bucket of honey over. And then and then we had to source like Australian product or find, Wagyu suppliers here in Australia to source Australian product for us over there or to cart it over for us in a time restraint. I found a barramundi supplier in Massachusetts. That was actually not bad, but I was just like, how fucking random is this? If I need barramundi for the first course and somehow I can get it. Like, it's not Australian barramundi, it's not Humpty Doo or whatever, it's not from Australian waters, but from Massachusetts, I'll take it. They were small little baby ones, but, it was just an amazing experience just to get to be amongst it again. And to do, like, not that it was large scale catering, it was just that, you know, the fact that you just had to move all this equipment, not equipment, you had to, like, we're walking into kitchens, we're just plugging into someone else's kitchen or catering kitchen. Sort of like, it reminded me of walking into the Crown kitchens, to be honest, walking through Crown Casino style kitchens, the way they were set up and just how the big and size and scale that they were. Because these guys are punching thousands of meals a day for all the office staff there, who are running around in and out every day. The security stuff around it, in a post 9/11 world, was still pretty strong. Even though this was like 2012 or 13, I think. So it was pretty unreal to just, take our little bit of Australiana over to Washington, DC and cook for the big wigs of the world.
How did you come to pinpoint the sporting arena for a catering business? Take us through those steps.
Yeah, so I sort of fell into that by accident. But again, it always comes back to network for me. So I started Adonis Catering purely out of gyms. I was trying to tap into gyms, into a gym database, and sending an email, butting up with these gyms and creating a service for them where we cooked meals for the local gym goers who went to this gym or the members of this gym. And I was trying to do it that way. It became a total pain in the ass to chase, person X for the cost of 3 burritos when they're forgetting that haven't paid it, and I'm just sitting there chasing it. Scale that, I couldn't scale it. I was too small to understand how to scale it. It was a bit of growing pains, struggling with what kitchen I needed in order to scale that monetarily. So it just became a bit of a saga. To be honest, I was a bit down and out with it. I almost went into bankruptcy, almost lost my apartment. So I had to snap into, right, just do what you're good at, Petros, and let's run kitchens or work in kitchens. So I landed at Mr. Bianco at the time in 2017, got myself out of the weeds. No pun intended, but I got out of the financial restraints I was in, and then it sort of lands that Melbourne City Football Club, or one of the dietitians that I met through Western Bulldogs at the time, was going to school with the guy who was the dietitian at Melbourne City Football Club at the time in Mandurah, and they connected, and they connected to me, and then I sort of maneuvered my way into this football club once or twice a week or once or twice a fortnight to now being the full-time caterer 60 years later. I just sat back and watched what the other caterers weren't doing. In essence, is what I did as a commie demi chef at Press Club, where I was just sitting back and going, right, what are the CDPs not doing? They're not cleaning up the end of service. They're not scrubbing the floors. They're not doing the ordering. I'm going to do all this for them. And then I'm going to make myself even more employable. And I'm going to fast track my way to being a CDP. And by chance, I just became a sous chef within, a year of coming out of my apprenticeship, just because I identified that mentality of going, right, if someone else is not going to do it, I'll do it for them. And then I'll become the go-to guy. So forever and whatever in my career, I've always become the go-to guy of whatever kitchen I've been in. And that's probably been something that I've always, hung my hat on, saying, right, why? And then it's funny because I remember as well at the time at Press Club, why are the CDPs and sous chefs who just got hired coming to the third-year apprentice or commie who just got qualified for understanding of how the ordering works, or which days which suppliers come in, or how George likes this, or how the sous chef likes that, or how the head chef likes to do the lamb. I had no business telling people who were in the industry much longer than me how to do their jobs, let alone to even be listening to me. But because I learned through peripheral and understanding of that, I need to pick up. I'm doing what I'm doing in front of me, but I'm not sitting there with my blinkers on. I'm watching what the sous chef's doing on the other end of the bench. That's how he puts the lamb on the spit. That's how he does the lamb neck with the yogurt and mastic. That's how he does, and all these little tricks I'm picking up out of the corner of my eye, that eventually when someone went down, someone called in sick, that rare occasion, or the sous chef got bumped to another venue, I just stepped in and the head chef went, "What are you doing over there? What do you know about cooking steak?" Shut up and watch me go. I'll do this. There'll be some teething for this lunch service, but I promise you I'll get it done. So it's that mentality of working with these dietitians now then turned into watching all the other caterers. There was 4 or 5 caterers at the time that were coming into Melbourne City Football Club at Latrobe. And again, they were little cafes. They had no business being there because they're not working with the dietitians as closely as what I ended up doing. But I identified that they weren't working with the dietitians. And then I identified at the time that the women's team wasn't getting looked after. I was like, how do you have, at the time, this was 2017, 2018, I was like, how do you have the women's team that is the only team in this club that's bringing in silverware at the time, They were 3-time champions. They just had a three-peat. These girls are in the Matildas, and they had no budget for them to eat anything outside of match day. So I put my money where my mouth was, whatever money I had, which wasn't much at the time. But I said to the club, let me be your caterer. I'll look after the women's team. And if you can guarantee some of the men's team in it so I can cover my costs, then I'll look after your women's team 2-3 times a week for your 16-week season or 16 weeks of the year. So they were keen on that, obviously, why they're going to knock back free meals. But then, you look at that squad, and I'm looking at some of the pictures around me right now as I'm sitting in the community room. Like, it's these Matildas who were massive a few months ago, though, household names, the Kaya Simons, the Steph Catleys, the Lydia Williamses, the Ellie Carpenters. I was cooking for all of them. And, they're again, relationships that I've sort of nurtured and kept in touch with them. There's other internationals that have worked at Melbourne City Football Club too. Rebecca Stott, who, is a New Zealand international, Hannah Wilkinson, who's another New Zealand international. There's, the little Japanese girl, I can't remember her name right now. She also played in the Japanese Women's World Cup team in the mid 2000s. So, it's, again, don't sit still is what I'm getting at. Like, I never sat there and went, hey, just do what your job is and what the prep list says. I've always looked beyond and just had my blinkers off, and I just pushed myself to, learn to upskill myself and to learn other things. And if I didn't know something, then I just asked, but I had that network in my back pocket to go, right, that network's there. I know who I need to go speak to, whether it's a discussion about vegan cream cheese, which is another discussion I'm having at the moment for a client about how to source, because apparently Tofudi has gone triple in price. So you got to find another way of doing vegan cream cheese products. So it's just always having that discussion around going, how do you do, don't sit still, it's just chase it, and amazing things will come out of it.
It's not just sport that you're sort of dabbling in either. It's recently you picked up a gig with the Village Gold class. What's that market like to cook for?
So so one thing I've always prided myself on is understanding and listening to a client, whether it's talking to athletes who hate vegetables, which, fuck me, there's plenty of them. If it's athletes that are carb phobic, I swear to God, Huck, there's some of these players, if it's green, they think it's going to give them cancer or something. I don't know. Like it's just a lettuce leaf, mate. Just eat it, enjoy it. Like, not everything comes out of a bottle. Like, the amount of times I used to get asked for a ketchup bottle every time they wanted fried eggs. I was just like, you're crushing my soul inside. There's a whole baked ricotta with roast pumpkin through it and ginger dressing and wild greens over the top, and you want to put fucking ketchup on your eggs, you kill me right now. But anyway, they came around to that, and it's just a maneuvering of, try this a little bit and I swear you'll like it. But going back to the question, like, it's always understanding of, like, listening to your client, and just, when something comes my way. So in this case, Village Gold Class has contacted me and said, right, we've gone a bit stagnant as an organization, which is pretty common these days, let's be honest. And we haven't changed the menu really in about a decade or so. Can you look at this? Can you look after this for us? So then you delve into their realm of, like, okay, what's it like to eat reclined in a dark room with reflective light, watching a film for 2 to 3 hours? Like, how do you do a food offering around that? It's sort of like the dinner in the dark concept, which is what obviously was massive 15, 20 years ago. So I pulled out some old case studies around that on how to approach it, but it sort of doesn't matter how you plate something up. And we always, with the company the size of Village, you always need to be looking at costings. They're a big enough entity that where they can, throw their weight around a bit with certain suppliers and say, right, we're going to go through this amount of volume. We're going to spend $250,000 in burgers over the next, 12 months with or without a writer's strike. So we can, go to work with, the best beef patty that their money can get them for their client base, and the best brioche bun that goes with it, and the offerings around it. So it's just understanding of what the client wants and just listening to them. And once you listen to them, then you can play your best foot forward. For me, I always ask my client, whoever the client is, give me your line. Give me the line that I can play up against. Because once I get to the end of that line, I'll know exactly where my borders and perimeters are. Because if I can't do anything with, halal products, then I'll stay away from halal products. If you don't want me to do anything that is this cost, so you don't want me to do caviar and everything, then I won't touch caviar or truffle. Fine. But give me that parameter. So once, I'll spend 2 or 3 weeks. I spent 2 weeks watching services at Crown Casino and Coringal Village Gold Class. And it's just like, right, they don't have they've got plenty of staff, but they're just unskilled staff. So there's a lot of, it's an out of high school job for these kids. So there's a lot of 17 to 25-year-olds who are entering this job, who are trying to cook in a kitchen or run food in a cinema, and there's just understanding on how to cook for them and how to what menu you can create for them and what products you can give them to help them. They're not going to sit there making handmade pasta like I do at Apoca. They're not going to sit there making sugo over the stove for hours and, or massaging a beef jus on the stove overnight. Like, it's not to that level. But you are going to pull out a bladder of beef jus if you really want to use it, and then you need to, how to maneuver it into a pan or how to maneuver it into a dish, or maybe we do that tomato sugo out of a vessel, a bought product that goes underneath some pulpatine, some beautiful beef meatballs with a little bit of blue cheese aioli over the top. So that's like a style of dish that we sort of looked at, and how does that eat reclined and in the dark? Like, it's that always understanding of like, right, how is a client eating it? They're not eating in a room with intricate tableware or a linen cloth or Legois cutlery. You're in a dark room and handheld is at best because they're also holding a drink, and there's parameters around how that works and how that looks. And then you don't want the door opening and closing all the time when you're watching a cinema. That's the other thing I learned. Like, as a 3-hour film, that door swinging open and shut over the time because they don't have because they got waiters coming in and out. It's a pain in the ass for the movie watching experience. So you want to be immersed in what's happening on screen because that's its own kettle of fish. But it's just again, just listen to your client.
Well, you've created an incredible business there. What do you love about what you do?
The versatility. Like, I've always been about versatility in the kitchen. I've now transgressed that to my business life. I'm not going to lie, it gets monotonous cooking for athletes 44 weeks of the year when they can't have butter and sugar and all that amazing delicious things that in the chef world, or what I do at Apoca is great at as well. Being head chef at Apoca for the last 3 years has been awesome too. So I've found a way to manage both at the same time. It's sort of worked in my weeks because because Apoca is shut Thursday. He's only open Thursday to Sunday these days. So it's allowed me to go do other things Monday to Wednesday, I suppose, or Sunday to Wednesday. And that's where I've sort of been looking after my catering company there, and, how my staffing works around those parameters too. The versatility of it all is more around what I get to do each day. Like, as much as we're doing Mexican beef brisket right now, I'm also thinking about, getting back into Village tomorrow to do a gold class experience, to rejig the menu and start going through the training of it all to roll that menu out in mid-December or early December, I think. So I'm one of those people that just has to have things going at all times in my mind, and like, just trying to silence those thoughts sometimes is a battle to be present in the moment, to be with my kids and my wife, and to be that husband and father that I need to be. But it's a matter of just making there's some good things about being self-employed and there's some shit things about being self-employed. But the good things, I suppose, is you get to pick and choose what you want to do and how that affects your life. And for me, I'm just trying to maneuver all these things that I love doing. I tried to get out of the restaurant industry years ago, and that's why I created Adonis. But COVID happened. Angie at Apoca, Angie and Guy needed a head chef. I was there. I tried to get out of this industry and they fucking dragged me back in this whole restaurant world. So it's just a case of, doing what you love and saying, right, I'm going to stretch myself here, but how long do I stretch myself for in regards of running a restaurant and looking after a consultancy gig or two, and looking after a catering company that looks after men's and women's teams and academy kids from in a few weeks onwards. So it's a full-time gig. It's keeping myself busy. It's keeping myself engaged, and I'm grateful that my wife has given me two beautiful kids, but the opportunity to live out that dream. So for me, the biggest drama for me is balance, to balance all the enjoyment of the testosterone-driven and adrenaline-pumping services that I love, and the money in the bank scenario, because that's obviously a big one as well. And how to balance all that being a dad now. It's not just me anymore. It's not just me living in a halfway house in an apartment as a 20-something CDP's sous chef wanting to be a head chef somewhere. I've got 3 mouths to feed and a wife to look after and be supportive there as well.
Well, It's an absolute honour to have you on Deep in the Weeds today to hear just a part of your story, and very much looking forward to catching up with you again and hearing more of your stories. Please keep in touch and we'll catch up again soon.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.